This is the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. You are listening to Broken Rules and the Results. It's interesting how much guidance a business needs for day-to-day business operations, because we don't know what people's life was like before they showed up at work today. We don't know what it's going to be like for them when they leave today. We can impact what they do when they are with us in our organizations and in our teams. And when we take situations and we understand that there are these concepts and these rules that just guide human behavior, as well as these rules that come directly from action. So there's no words around it. There's no necessarily expectation. It shows up, it's here, and you know it's here, even though nobody talks about it, these unwritten rules. Understanding these in our organization really helps us figure out how do we completely connect in a genuine way when we choose to interact with the people in our organization. And by the way, the when we choose should be when we choose, because we will choose to go out and talk to those people. And, business rules, they can be very dingy. They can be very system and process oriented and take a lot of emotion out. And what you're going to hear from Jeff and Andrew and Howard in just a minute are going to talk about the fact there's no way to take the emotion out, yet there is a way to use it, that emotion, that response, to notice, decide if you like it or not, and make the change that is needed for the situation, and to make it something where everybody's position is at least understood, even if it can't be a win-win-win, if you will. All right, so let me introduce you to Howard Strauber, who is the head of business development at Invested Consultants and is a financial professional with 30 years experience. Andrew Jenkins is a leadership consultant that works with leadership and management teams who want to make a difference in their organizations. And Jeff Sherman of Sherman Speaks is the developer of Core Theory Quadrants. We'll be right back after this, and you will hear them answer the question, what's a rule you broke? And what was the outcome and lesson?
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
All right, Howard. I want to know, what's a rule you broke and what was the outcome and lesson?
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I've done it in both business and personally, but let's talk about business per se. I would do a lot of work on LinkedIn for people. I was asked to stay away from somebody's profile, and I noticed that they were not responding to any of the emails that were being sent, so I forwarded them to the person himself, and the outcome is I lost a customer. And, that's the easiest way, or the easiest thing to lose a customer is not abiding by one's directions. I was told not to answer anything. I just forwarded something, and I lost the customer. So cause and effect, so to speak.
Andrew, what's a rule you broke, and what was the outcome and lesson?
The unwritten rule, which I didn't know at the time, was not to admit failure. Avoid any difficult customers was the one that I broke, but it broke for the right reasons and it broke in the right way.
Please tell us the story.
Okay, cool. A company I was managing, a group of people, technical people, and we had a customer that had some technical issues with a piece of network kit, which was very cutting edge at the time. And none of us knew how it worked, to be honest with you. And this guy would ring up every day and give us a diatribe of all the stuff that was going wrong with it. And so no one would pick up the phone to him and just ignore him. And then one day he rang up and asked me, "Are you all dead?" Because he couldn't get a response from any of us. And then he phoned his boss, and then I got a call from his boss. Everything went a bit wrong for a little while until I turned it right again. But what we were facing was an unwritten rule.
Hey, Jeff. What's a rule you broke, and what was the outcome and lesson?
Snowmobiles are for snow, so I broke that rule. I got clear back in with a group of riders. Night was coming upon us. We were deep in the snow in the mountains, and we came across a river, and it was the only way to get to our destination without backtracking about 4 hours. So we didn't have the time or the daylight to backtrack. So we turned our snowmobiles into watercraft and just punched it and splashed across the river on snowmobiles and up the other bank and continued snowmobiling. So what I've learned from that is obstacles aren't always obstacles. We just have to think about the tools we have and the capacity and what could we do, giving action and speed towards our destination. And I'll tell you, it applies to business all the time. I come into situations, it seems like the deadline is coming. It seems like I'm against a wall, and rethink it and bring about fruition of a common goal, and it happens.
So talking about unwritten agreements, what are the most common unwritten agreements that you have come across? And are they actually useful to a relationship or an interaction?
I think the most common rule, unwritten, is I will display character and you will display character in return, and we will have the best outcome from that. And I know that society tends to break that rule, like character isn't necessary, I just need to get the job done. But what I have found is without character, neither party can fully rely on the other, and there will be a lack of communication.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeff. Andrew, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I like that, actually. I think without character, I think Jeff's got a point there around trust, and actually part of communication isn't just the transaction and getting stuff done. It's finding out who each other are and strengthening the relationship through each other and learning to trust each other. If you like an example of that, back to my story, which I wanted to open up, I remember saying to this very, very powerful person on the end of the phone, well, where are you at the moment? And he said, well, I'm in Birmingham. I said, well, I'm in Birmingham. So what office are you in? And he told me which office. I said, well, I'm in that office. What floor are you on? And he said, well, I'm on the 3rd floor. Well, I'm on the 5th floor. Let me come and see you. And he said, yeah, sure, come and see me. So I went to see him and I said, look, it seems like we've got this problem out of control a little bit. Guys complaining about us. And I just want to say straight up, straight out, it's my fault. You can blame me. It's completely my fault. I manage this guy. And actually, in fact, to be honest with you, we've not been managing your man very well at all. We failed completely in managing this guy. And he said, oh my gosh, that's the first person that's ever walked in my office and said, it's my fault. And actually, I quite like it. Because actually I was willing to admit that we've got a problem, take it on me, it's my fault, let's get that out of the way, let's now talk properly. So our characters came out. We were able to then talk honestly. And I said, to be honest with you, we're dealing with some very high technology here that none of us know how to work. And we've got no supply agreements for any of this. It's just impossible stuff and none of us know how it works. And the trouble is most of my technical people are frightened to say that because they're frightened to say no to your powerful man. And yet this stuff is so cutting edge, we can't support it. And he said, so it's not really your fault then, is it? And I said, well, I don't know, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. And because of that, we developed a really strong relationship because I was able to kind of push against this person, but do it in a way that built our characters, and our rapport was built even though we had a disagreement. Because we built rapport, we were able to kind of come to a mutual understanding quite quickly. That's where Jeff's point is.
It took the defense down. Oh, yeah. Cool. I don't have to have that, right? There was the unwritten rule. I don't have to have that kind of conversation. Now you showed up, Andrew, and I get to have this kind of conversation. So you shifted the dynamic a lot.
As we look at this, accountability sets the boundaries. Yeah. Accountability also opens dialogue. Of all of our character traits, when we can have open dialogue, vulnerability, accountability, we will get results as a team. It just fosters human capacity. It just opens up segues to all kinds of ideas, all types of permissions, and in the end, it will be that accountability which brings the greatest structure to a company. Not accountability forced on someone, but accountability of character given to others.
I agree.
Yeah, nicely said, Jeff.
Thank you.
I think
there's too much in today's society about accountability, about responsibility. It's the other guy's fault. When owning up to one's actions is crucial, I think, in work and in your outside personal life too.
And yet so many of us, the unwritten rules, Jeff, sometimes just people pick up the wrong stuff there and they believe that the unwritten rule is, well, you don't admit that. But actually, the unwritten rule really should be you do admit it and grow a backbone and wear big boys' trousers and get on with it.
Well, if you do, you'll set a premise for others to follow that will open up strategy and innovation like no other.
Yeah.
How do we find the unwritten rules in a work environment?
I think there's a third rail. You got to stay away from politics and you got to stay away from religion. And there are times and places. Unfortunately, we're so polarized right now. In this country, we tend to forget that. We tend to forget that boundary too. And those two are the most obvious. And obviously, then also the personal choices, someone's personal involvement in their lives. That's not for fodder. That's about accountability and respect for others too. I would tell you politics and religion to start with.
For me, these are more deep-seated, and these are about what emerges in a culture if there isn't any leadership direction directing better rules, if you like. So, for example, Jeff talked about accountability and responsibility and vulnerability and trust and opening up dialogue. All of those are fantastic rules to set, and they're set by example from leadership. However, if there isn't any example set by leadership, what happens is, in my experience, is that the rules become defined somehow by a group of people trying to work together. And actually quite often left as default, people default to survival mechanisms, to defense mechanisms, to denial mechanisms, and to fear. You end up with things like us and them, it's not my fault, this isn't the way we do things around here. Blame others, it's not my fault. Fear of failure. We tried that before and it doesn't work. Don't be different. These are kind of a lot of the unwritten rules which I expose when I'm working with leadership teams quite a bit. And it's quite interesting where they come from. And people have got no idea where they come from, but generally speaking, they come from the pervasive culture. And actually a good leadership team kind of redefines those boundaries, as Jeff was saying, by giving people permission to be different, to grow their value sets rather than to be controlled by basic values. And that needs maturity of a good management team, a good leadership team, a good leader, a good team leader can help a team to break those kind of constraints which people tend to operate on if they're working from fear and basic values.
A good leadership team knows what the shared values are and invites everybody to join in and step into these values, that what makes this company a company. And then, of course, it's clear, which means I know individually when I'm showing up in this situation, how my individual values contribute and add to the organization.
I kind of get a bit confused with values sometimes because they just seem to be sets of words that are written on walls in company. Yeah, it's just like, what? But they don't actually mean anything, where to me, you define a set of core values by working together as a team. Okay, so what do we want to value? How do we want to collaborate? How do we want to provide a culture that does the stuff that Jeff talked about in terms of openness, vulnerability, and that needs training and it needs development. It's not just a set of values, what you end up with, a set of words. It's more a case of, okay, so how does that turn up in our habits and behaviors and what we say and what we do?
When we establish culture consistently by our actions, then everything else falls into place. There is no way to create a creed that will move a people. There's no way to demand a cause. We have to create a cause by inviting and empowering our employees, our teammates, and our clients to be involved in the process that leads to success for all. I have accountability to create character, but I have accountability to expect character in return from my employees and my clients. I have accountability to provide opportunity for myself and my family, but I also have accountability to provide opportunity for my employees. What are their aspirations? What would they like to do with their talents and abilities within the company? How can I put them in charge of something that will make a difference because they are involved? I also have accountability with relationships. Am I building them? Am I creating them in the workplace? Am I allowing my people to collaborate and to think? Original thought is rare because everything is pre-programmed. We have to let people think and reward initial and creative thought. And then I have an accountability to education. Do I educate my people? Do I educate myself? Am I staying cutting edge? These 4 character traits I call acronyms for CORE: character, opportunity, relationship, education. And this core theory is one of the practices I take to businesses could it be so simple? And it is, because if any one of those quadrants of accountability, character, opportunity, relationships, and education, is not reciprocal, if there's no reciprocal accountability in those areas, we will have regret within our organization. We will have attrition. We will say things like, I just can't find the right help. We have to be accountable for both our core theory and the core that our company believes in as a whole. Then we get behind that cause, and it is a benchmark for us to hit all the time, and everybody's willing to aim for it.
I would love to hear from you guys when we're interacting, and this could be for ourselves and our family, our extended family, our employees and our teams. It could be managing up as well as managing down. How do we actually show up and practice a new habit?
How do you stop getting bitten by the unwritten, I suppose?
Oh, that should be the title of the show.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Bitten by the unwritten. That could be a good hashtag for you, Andrew.
Good hashtag, yeah. For me, just excluding family for a moment, just talking business-wise and teams, you get a group of people working together, very different characters, very different people, can be in different locations. Actually, teaching people soft skills, as you said, is one thing. What I found to be quite successful equally is to define, how do we turn our unwritten rules into good habits? How do we break the unwritten rules? And one way of doing that is to admit that they're there. Okay, so you spend time working on, okay, what's the default culture, and do we want to change that culture? And if we do want to change it, what is it that we need to change? So it's important that you spend time as a team defining what it is you're up against. And that means being brutally honest with each other. I found working with leadership teams, and all sorts of teams actually, from team leadership teams to shop floor teams, when there are unwritten rules in the way, they need to be talked through. And when you start to learn, well, actually, they really truly exist, is okay, so what's the emotional impact of those unwritten rules? So you define how that makes people feel. And that's a rough guess, but actually people will know how they feel about those unwritten rules. And then you've got an opportunity to kind of say, well, okay, if we change that, what would be the improved rule? If we made a change to this, how could we improve it? And how would we feel if we made that improvement? And then you've got the basis of a new habit. And then that habit can be turned through a team charter or a commitment with that team to say, we are going to be committed for the next 28 days, for the next 3 months, that we are going to absolutely eradicate these unwritten rules. One of the ways to do that is to admit they're there and then communicate that, but then actually talk about how we're going to use language, how we're going to change our actions, and become very overt with it. But actually, eventually, it becomes the new norm, and people operate with a new set of habits. That's one way of doing it. I found it works very well.
Thank you. What would you guys add?
I think it depends what you come with, whether it's a moral compass or something as simple as a work ethic. You have a work ethic or you don't have a work ethic. And depending on one's age, it can be easy to install or not easy to install. I think the most important thing is showing up, and then good things happen. For example, if you're working with a team, the reliability of the team is that people are there on time, and then good things will happen. It really depends on how you were taught previously coming into that sort of situation. What are your prior experiences as well?
And what if they're not?
I think
what if your previous experience doesn't fit the situation you now found yourself in?
I think leadership is led by the action of being a leader. And I think if a leader is willing to dirty their hands and take responsibility and be the point person rather than delegate, especially if that situation does exist, then it'll be good. If it's a leader that delegates, you could have chaos. I think each situation is different, of course. But I think a work ethic is not installed. You kind of show up with one, especially if you're older.
One of the things that I found that helps with changing habits is to replace them. If I am left alone with my bag of habits, then that's what I have. But I found that when I can go into a company, and I may actually distract by creating a new habit that we're going to work on together, be that a new strategy of sales or a new strategy of production or something as simple as painting the warehouse floor and working on it as a group. But when we can come in and create positivity of a new habit, then that allows us to present ideas in a course of action that is positive and then repeat it. And so it's almost like we can repeat positive habits to where we eliminate the bad ones. Now, they do need to be addressed. I'll tell you, these two fine men are, changing the world, I'm sure, with their insights and their wisdom. And I think sometimes a diversion, a new focus, look what happens to the country or to a community when something new is introduced or there's a new crisis that we have to come together on. My goodness, a whole new population is invented and we become human again. I think it's a waste if we don't say, all right, what habit are we going to instill and what will it distract from and how will it help heal other habits that need reduction?
Isn't that interesting? I'm going to totally take this out of the business, workplace, people thing, and I'm going to talk about cravings for a minute, because I think if we bring it back to something we can all relate to outside of the experiences we've had, maybe this will help. So for example, every once in a while, for no good reason, I crave sugar. I'm going to say that might be this habit that we don't want. And so then when I make one small change, who knows what it is, but the act of changing allows a direct result over the course of as quickly as 15 minutes, and more likely when we get out of this instant concept of craving, a day or two to see, is there a change? And then be able to notice what that change is before the next step is taken. And what I'm hearing is that with effort and energy and intention, that craving could change. It could go away completely. It could become something else. It could develop and provide more knowledge to something else that actually needs our attention.
Well, you're going to want to capture that and print it, because that would be an excellent article. The way you just said that. We just open our mouths and amazing things come out. That was good.
There's your next blog, Jessica.
Yeah, woohoo! Good to know. I will keep on that and expand on that. Excellent. I like that. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. This time has actually gone by really quickly. And we're coming up on the last question, which I really am excited to hear about, which is why it's bold. Why is it bold to understand rules and consider breaking them?
Well, I'm grateful that we're not still practicing bloodletting. When we find a rule that's replaced by a better one, let's go ahead and be bold enough to replace it.
Absolutely.
And when we find a replacement that was not sufficient, let's be bold enough to erase it.
Yeah, start again.
I tend to be a rule breaker. I mean, my past life, I brokered commodities. I brokered sugar options and futures. We were taught to break rules. And not in the sense that people got hurt, but people got financially hurt. Sometimes unlearning habits, unlearning situations which have proved to be fruitful for me in the past is really sometimes the best I can do. Sometimes the best I can do. I also think as I go through the aging process, I realize the repercussions are deeper and more severe, testing the edge, so to speak.
Very thoughtful. Thank you, Howard. Andrew?
It's a generational thing, I suppose. As you get older, you realize that, people really do matter, and that everybody's got a family at home, and they're turning up with crappy behaviors or difficult behaviors, as Howard was talking earlier. What happens if their moral compass isn't there? What happens if their work ethic isn't there? Well, actually, part of our responsibility as leaders and as managers is to help people to develop and help people to change and help people to create lives that actually they can count and they can make a difference with, so that when they go home, they talk to their partners, they talk to their families. Everybody matters. And it's really easy to kind of say, well, this guy or this lady isn't fitting in with my team. We need to get rid. We need to lay off. And maybe that is one answer. But, another answer is, how can I help to turn this person around? How can I help actually to change the culture of our organization so that people enjoy turning up to work? Actually, I have a responsibility as a leader that when I get up in the morning, my feet touch the floor, what is it that's going to make me whistling? To go to work whistling. What's going to make me come home again singing? Yeah, and that's the same not just for me, but my the people that work with me. How can we get a group of people to go to work singing and come home whistling? That to me is a key part of what we do, and working with people's characters and getting beyond just the rule sets. That's how it is for me. That's how I think it should be.
From the unwritten rules to how do we find the unwritten rules, to the habits we have and actually starting the process to change them, and why it's bold. You heard it all here from Andrew, Jeff, and Howard. You will find all program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P63. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 63. Also, search Broken Rules and the Results. Being a leader is so important, and you're listening. Rate this. Rate this. How does this support, help you develop, and relate to what you're experiencing as a leader today? Then subscribe to the Voice of Bold Business Radio on your preferred listening platform. Every Tuesday and Friday, new programs are aired, and they will be put automatically into your listening queue. What it means to be a leader today is defined by us in those roles. So we want to know from you, what was a rule you broke and what was the result?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.